Coming up on Tech News Today, it's Christmas Eve, which means we're kicking off our special editions of Tech News Today between now and the new year. We've got 3 great listeners from the Tech News Today audience to join us. Find out who they are next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, December 24th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by viewers like you. That's right. It's going to be our open mic episode. Thanks for watching all year long, everybody. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Aya Zakhtar.
And I'm Jason Howell.
And this is the show where we keep you up to date on the most important stories in the tech world usually, but it's Christmas Eve, everybody.
Man, I'm so excited for Santa Claus. I can't wait.
Apparently wearing the same clothes I was wearing last Monday, but we're having a special episode all week long, as we do every year during the break between Christmas and New Year's. We do some special episodes, and today is our open mic episode where we've invited 3 listeners of the show to come on and chat with us about what they think about tech, what they like about tech, maybe some thoughts on the new year. Who knows? Thanks to everyone. We got hundreds and hundreds of people who emailed wanting to be on this show. We only have time to talk to 3 people if we want to have any kind of substantial conversation at all. So, we wish we could choose every single one of you. But try again next year if you're into it, and if we actually are still here after the Mayan apocalypse. Happened last week.
We're here. Everything's
Here,
fine.
so
It was just a joke.
There you go. We're going to start with a representative from our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com, Tom Gerke, graphics guy on our TNT Reddit page and enterprise IT infrastructure manager. Welcome to the show, Tom. How's it going, man?
Thank you. Thank you for giving me a reason to be out of the office.
Was this you? Did you call in Tech News Today to work today?
Yeah, I did.
Nice tree.
Courtesy of my wife. Last year at this time when I was single, this room was empty, as befits a bachelor pad, but now it's festive.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Aw, my heart is warmed.
That's awesome. So how did you get involved in the TNT subreddit, and also how did you make it look so freaking awesome? Because it looks great.
Actually, I just got involved in Reddit in general, and Reddit's great for a kind of a basic look and feel, but I have this graphic side and white space and color, and there's a whole presentation aspect that kind of bugs me about the default Reddit, which is, like I said, it's good for a minimalist thing. But so I just started fooling around and didn't really have any plans to do anything with it. And then Kyle put the word out asking for people to submit themes, and I'd already kind of had something half worked up, and I polished it up and somewhat based it off the Twit website, and
the rest is history.
The rest is history. It is what it is.
Did you so do you do a lot of graphic design in your day job, or is this just sort of a hobby for you?
It's a hobby, really. Graphic design, photography, painting. It's things that I am interested in, and I always try to give. Well, I don't try to give it. It just happens a tech spin. So whether it's painting, I'm in Photoshop, or photography, it's digital. Design, it's CSS and HTML.
Well, you did a great job on it. So what do you do as an IT infrastructure person? What is your day job?
So I work for a company that's the only domestically owned enricher of uranium for a nuclear power plant.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's I don't get involved in in any I'm not walking home with a stick of uranium in back of my shirt like Homer Simpson.
That's too bad.
But the only interesting aspects, which aren't necessarily fun, because there's a difference, is stories like Stuxnet and Fukushima and anything like that, at least indirectly impact me in some way. And then, just the general, we're dealing with regulators, NRC, Department of Energy, whatnot. So the IT security side of things. So it's actually quite a few topics that are surprisingly relevant to quite a few Twitch shows.
Tom, I know you're a bit of a fitness nut. I follow you on Twitter. I know you're doing crazy things like Insanity, P90X. You got a fitness gadget or fitness app or site you use all the time? Because I want to find that motivation. Other than seeing your tweets doing these things, I need to do what you do.
No, actually, I've been. That's a thought I had for a post, or just go out there and research. Actually, I thought that's what Eric was going to be doing, so I kind of steered away from apps and fitness stuff. But just find what works for you. And, I always have to give it kind of that tech spin to keep me interested. So data visualization, you see, if you've seen my posts, it's Google Spreadsheets, Google Calendar, whatever makes it work for you. There's
so you're
so
not
many
into like a bunch
options out there.
of Nike fuel apps or any of that sort of thing. You just kind of roll your own, it sounds like.
Yeah. So I hear you guys talk all the time about Fitbit and, the other offerings, and I am intensely interested in those, but there are so many options that it's hard to decide, where do you spend your money? Unless you're doing a review show and getting review units, it's hard for your average consumer to make that choice, because you hate to spend that kind of money and then end up with something that's, broken after a week, as has happened in the past. So I tend to steer away from those things unless something just pops up that, makes this huge splash. So again, rely on shows like TNT and shows like it to do reviews, before you buy, etc. So,
Sarah, you've run into that before.
What?
The breaking of the apps.
Oh yeah,
Breaking of
I'm sort of grinning over here because I was just at a Web conference recently, and all of the speakers were given little Fitbits,
Oh, nice.
for participating. And I haven't even taken it out of the box yet. I'm excited about it, but I just feel like I've been burned so many times before. I don't want to fall in love with yet another wearable gadget that's just going to break on me in the next month or two.
Maybe you should adopt the Gurkey system.
Maybe I should. P90X.
well,
I'll just do that.
Don't do that, because whenever you report on a fitness gadget, Sarah's the barometer, depending on how far the eyes roll, or it's a pretty good judge of how well it's
He
going to do.
needs you to suffer.
My gadgets break, so yours don't have to.
That's
right.
right.
And
Something like that.
we all appreciate that. You're taking the bullet for the team.
Oh, thanks, Tom.
Hey, before we let you go, Tom, I want to, talk about the subreddit again. We asked all of them, right, Jason? All the moderators.
Yeah, I
if
put
they-
out a message to
if
all
they
the
were
mods.
interested in being on. The only one who responded positively, or not positively, the only one who said, "Yeah, I'll be willing to go and put my face up there on the show," was Tom. So he was willing to take the bullet for the team. But all of you guys do a great job. TD Enterprises, Kyle, who I now know how to pronounce properly instead of calling him Kildee all the time, Jacob Miller. Do you have any message to pass along from that team to folks? Because we just want to pass along our thanks to all you guys.
Yeah, like I said, I just do the graphic stuff. The lion's share of the work is done by those guys, and I don't think people realize. So you see all these stories about Reddit and the good and the bad, and don't realize that there are real people behind the scenes taking care of a lot of stuff, so that the users of the Reddit don't have to deal with garbage like spam or things that look like articles but they're really advertisements.
That's why Kyle has the title of the janitor, right?
Yeah, Kyle, he is the moderator for a large number of some of the largest Reddit subreddits on the site, not just TNT. So, and I'm not necessarily involved in those myself, but I see a little bit of what he does, and the whole team there that does any sort of moderation, whether it's on Reddit or even the chat room moderators. That's not an easy job, and my hat's off to those guys. Honestly, Jason put the word out, and I didn't really feel like I had a whole lot to say there because my involvement is somewhat shallow, I guess. But to kind of be the standard holder for the other guys, they really deserve all kinds of props, and my hat's off to them. I see some of the stuff they deal with. So
yeah. No, I appreciate you mentioning that, because I don't think a lot of folks understand all of the trash that needs to be taken out to make a subreddit work well. A lot of those subreddits, and all you guys do a great job. You do a great job making it look good, man, and also representing for the team here today. So we appreciate that.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
One last question before we let you go. I know we talk about it a lot on different Twitch shows. As someone who works closely with uranium every day, well, maybe not, closely with uranium, is there a good reason why we should have nuclear power plants online?
Sure, you got to keep the lights on. There is.
No, I mean specifically on the internet. Should they be network connected?
Oh, no. I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, that's okay.
You mean, like SCADA systems?
Yeah, because you were talking about Stuxnet and all that stuff earlier.
Yeah, no, those things need to be separate. I'm sure Steve Gibson has a lot to say about that.
For sure.
On that topic, but yeah, from my perspective, I oversee mainly the business networks, which is the Exchange, file servers, that type of thing. There is a whole separate network for the critical stuff, and obviously I can't talk to that.
Sure, of course.
But in terms of like infrastructure stuff in the U.S., there's a lot of you cover stories every now and then, something like Stuxnet, or there's a scare in a power facility in the Midwest, and those things really need to be separate. Sometimes you need to do analysis so that you can pass data one way, but if you can pass data one way, odds are you can pass it the other way too, and that's where things get dicey. But in general, no, I don't. They need to be separate.
Awesome. Tom, thank you so much for being willing to come on the show and chat with us and talk with us and represent in subreddit. Really appreciate it, man.
Thank you.
About.me/Tom Gehrke. It's TOMGEHRKE. If you want to see what Tom is about on the internet. Let's bring in our next guest, Jason. It's Bodie Grimm. who lists himself as procrastinator Opus Apps. Is that right, Bodie?
I'm the head procrastinator.
Chief procrastinator. I'm sorry.
There you go.
Excellent.
I didn't want to use chief, but
Bodie, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and technology. How did you get interested in tech?
Actually, really early on in my 20s, I was trying to get a job at MCI, doing tech support. I had no idea I had no idea what, I knew what a computer was, but I had no idea what the parts were and all this stuff. And you had to take this really complicated test. I failed. And then after that, the lady said, well, you can look over your answers and come back tomorrow. So I memorized as much as I could, went back and I passed. And then after that, I figured if I'm going to do tech support for MCI, I should probably learn what technology is, and then just kind of fell in love with it from there.
So you're not still doing tech support, or are you?
No, I don't do tech support. I do. I'm a firefighter, and then a friend of mine. We have a kind of a partnership in Opus Apps, and that's just kind of like a hobby.
So by day, you fight burning buildings, and by night, what is Opus Apps?
Opus Apps, it's really kind of anything that we want it to be. Right now, we're just starting a Kickstarter campaign. Hopefully, it'll be up soon. And it's just I don't know. We like to get together. He's a neighbor of mine. We like to get together. We like to play video games, have a few beers. One of the things that's lacking is, you never get that moment when you're playing video games where you can really screw your fellow player. So we came up with this idea. We used to play a game called Aerobiz when we were in high school. And I don't know if anybody's ever played that, but we came up with an idea to make a game similar to Aerobiz, but the whole point is screwing your competitors, like sabotage, affecting their stock price. And that's what the Kickstarter project is.
Now, your Twitter bio says, quote, I might be the worst app developer in history.
Yeah.
What makes you the worst? I mean, this sounds like an interesting game because I know this is the way I used to play Mario Kart. I used to be the worst player. I used to go the other way on the track and basically screw up everybody else. So this sounds like a fun game. Are you going to be developing it soon, or because you're the worst app developer in the history, we're not going to see it?
Well, see, I'm the worst app developer in history. My partner, he's actually a programmer. He worked for THQ for a number of years. He's actually a capable person. So he's doing some contracts at the moment. So we're actually doing the Kickstarter so that we can hire a real programmer and a real artist so we can build a real game.
Definitely sounds like fun. I want to play this game. Instead of the game I make up in myself with these games, this would be like a fun thing for me to play, I think.
I don't quite. So you said stock price. Is it more of like a simulation game? It's not like a first-person shooter or something.
No. You manage your own airline, and then you can be as underhanded as you want to be. That's the goal. You can. I mean, obviously there'll be no terrorist acts, but you can talk the other players' unions into going on strike. You can slash the tires of their planes. You can it's just basically do everything you can to beat them and be as underhanded as you can possibly be.
So there's no Securities and Exchange Commission in your game?
No, I don't think so. I have to look online because we were going to use PRNet as a way to release false press releases. I don't know if PRNet exists, so I didn't want to put it in there.
Yeah, you might want to check, or use the one that was putting out the false press releases.
Bodie, you said you're a full-time firefighter. Are you sort of like the geek of the crew, or does everyone get around and talk about game development and tech?
No, it's those guys are all construction guys. They have very little use for computers, by and large. I've talked a couple of them into buying Macs, and now a couple of them have smartphones. But as a general rule, they are not interested in technology. So it's definitely just me. It's lonely.
Well, at least they have really other important things to worry about. Good excuse, right? If you're a firefighter, I don't need tech.
But when their stuff breaks down, when their phone is buggy, their computer gets a virus, are you the one they come to?
Oh, yeah. I don't have an Android phone, and I've really never even used one. And people just hand me their phone saying, there's something wrong with this. I don't understand it. Will you fix it? I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, here, let me buy you a different
that's
phone.
how you started in tech support in the first place, right? So you got experience going, I don't know, but I'll fix it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I do it for those guys, but I don't do it for anybody else because it's a nightmare. So I can tell those guys to pound sand if they don't like what I have to offer. So.
And you don't have a bunch of cool high tech in your fire trucks or any of your rescue gear or anything?
Well, I mean, we have a laptop that sits in the truck that we can go on scene and look where other trucks are in the valley. And then it's got a GPS, and that's really it.
Yeah.
In our job, we have thermal imaging cameras, but in our job, when technology goes bad, it just stops working. When something that's like actually mechanical, it goes bad, you can do things like if the pump goes bad or a lever on the pump goes bad, you can go, reach inside the pump panel and you can start pulling levers manually. If it's all done electronically, you can't do that. So that, truck is pretty much out of service. So it's kind of stuck between two worlds where they want to make them more high tech, but at the same time, there's so many fail safes in what we have now. They don't want to get rid of those.
On a smaller scale, I guess it's a similar problem to what they face in NASA, where the Mars Curiosity lander was running on decades old tech because they just wanted to make sure it was hardened, that it wouldn't break.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually pumping a fire probably, 8 years ago. And the two guys, at that time we only had 3-man trucks. So the two guys went inside the house and I'm outside the house, and the throttle was electronic throttle. Everything else was mechanical. It broke. And I'm trying to raise the guys on the radio because they can't get water. They're inside the house. It was a hairy situation. So eventually another truck pulled up and they took a line in, and we were able to pull those guys out, and they were fine. There was no danger for them, but they didn't have any water pressure or minimal water pressure.
Yeah. So what got you into to following the tech news? Is it just your general interest in technology? And what do you think we could do better? What would you like to see us do more of? Any kind of tips, any kind of advice?
Oh, more patents. More patents.
Yeah, everybody says that. More patents. Sarah says that all the time.
Oh, yeah. Love patents.
Yeah. Nobody
lock
gets
'em
bored
down.
with the patent story.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you guys do a great job. My wife and I just had twins, so we at 2:00 in the morning, I fire up the Roku and I'll feed one and watch the first part of Tech News Today, and then I'll feed the other one and watch the second part. And hopefully they go to sleep after that. If not, then we just continue watching TV until they go to sleep.
The kids' first words will be patent wars.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna do the show like this, knowing that.
I'm gonna redo all of the intro music with toy sound music, plunky plunky song.
Do you have a particular segment of tech news that you like better than others?
No, I like the way. When you guys first started, it seemed a little. You're just finding your way, but I like the way it's done now, where you just kind of do the news fuse in the beginning or whatever it's called, and then you talk about the tech news after that. I think it works out really well.
Yeah, I've heard
We're about 6 months into that format now.
Yeah.
So I think we switched over in July, so it's good to hear that it's going over well with you.
Yes. I'm, one person out of how many, but I like it.
Your voice matters.
Well, before we let you go, you have any questions for us? While you got us cornered, here's your chance. Ask us anything. AMA.
Oh, boy.
I was kind of curious how Sarah got into the
Technology?
France's prime minister. No, you're the prime minister of France.
Oh, the Prime Minister's party. I don't know. So it was really weird. There was an email that went out. It was completely in French, and a few people got it. And all I could really make out was something Prime Minister 7:30 p.m. And we thought it was a hoax or something. And it turns out that there is a huge initiative going on in France right now to make the country a better place to allow for startups to flourish. They've got some kind of crazy tax laws right now that are sort of counterproductive to starting a business, as a sort of a bootstrappy kind of a venture. And the Prime Minister wanted to get a bunch of tech people together and let us all in after we went through security. And we drank champagne and had finger food and shook his hand. And it was kind of just hey, let's all be on the same page. Here are some initiatives that are important to us here in France. Welcome other people of the world. And it was really fun. It's a very fancy place. It's his official residence. So it's not like he's
doesn't own
actually
it.
sleeping there.
Right.
But there are a lot of chandeliers, and yeah, it was a fun time. I felt very special.
So you got an email, but how'd you get the email?
They sent it to me.
Who's they?
The
Secret Society.
Government. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know why I was on the list. It was a LeWeb type of a thing.
Gotcha. All right.
So yeah, it was. So I just kind of fall into these things sometimes. So it was a good time.
Any other questions, Bodie?
No, that's pretty much it.
Well, dude, thank you
Thank
so much for being willing to be on. I appreciate you taking the time.
And for fighting fires.
Yeah.
That too.
Seriously.
Well, we haven't fought a fire in a long time, but thank you.
Well,
It's nice to hear.
I am thankful for your firefighting, and I'm extra thankful that you haven't had to fight one in a while. That's a good thing.
Yeah, we never want them to happen, but if they're going to happen, it might as well be on our shift. So that's kind of how we justify our jobs.
And if you want to run around slashing tires of competing airlines and getting other unions to strike, where would people find Opus Apps?
Opusapps.com, and hopefully the Kickstarter information will be up there soon, and you can follow us on Twitter at Opus Apps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bodie.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bodie.
All right, we got one more guest. Should we bring him in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's bring in Roberto Villegas of My So-Called 8BitLife.com. How's it going, Roberto?
Pretty good, Tom. Pretty good. Can't complain.
So you are a podcaster.
I am. Well, I at least I play one on the internet. I kind of more of a hack podcaster these days, but
are we.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
It's the same thing. So tell folks about My So-Called 8-Bit Life.
So the way I tend to pitch the podcast, or I tend to tell people about it, is I tend to relate to other podcasts. Specifically, that being Kevin Smith's Smodcast, sort of a conversation podcast, except a lot geekier. I tend to have random guests. I've had you on before, Tom. Sort of a relaxed interview / conversational podcast that tends to skew more towards the geeky side and more towards the, I guess, the generation that I tend to grow up on, the 80s and 90s, and sort of bring in video game references and things like that. So it becomes a sort of weird, I guess, amalgamation of interview / conversation, and it goes on for about an hour.
It's a cool show. It's a cool idea for a show. You also host the Movie Draft Minute.
Yeah, I do the audio portion for the Movie Draft Minute on the NSFW show. Blender MF or Matthew Frazier does the video portion. I tend to just do the vamping on the audio and putting in some type of video game music in the background. And then that gets mixed up and, becomes this beautiful thing that I just am just the voice of. Matthew does probably the best video work I've seen in a while.
Oh, stop! Your voice is amazing.
I'm serious. I'm not trying to because I'm just a voice. I'm just a voice. I'm just a guy that stresses over things like, man, should I use this Genesis song, or man, why am I not using this TurboGrafx 16 song? And that's all I am. The visuals, if they weren't there, I would just be a headless voice.
Are you playing as well in the movie draft?
Kind of, sorta. I'm more of the. I have a racehorse in the bet, but my racehorse is in complete dead last somewhere in the background. But I tend to keep up with the numbers in general. I've always been kind of fascinated with box office figures, especially when it comes to international figures. Just because movies you would think that do terribly in the States tend to do really, really well internationally, and that's kind of why we get so many of these, quote unquote, bad movies in theaters, because they actually recoup their money abroad. And so I tend to follow a lot of the numbers just as a hobby, because it just fascinates me that when you start talking in movies that make $1 billion and things like that, that just kind of fascinates me in that kind of economic sense.
Cool, man. Well, what got you into technology? How did you get started being geeky and playing around with tech?
For me, I think it was the first time I got a Nintendo. The minute I actually booted up my NES, like back in, I think, 85 or 86 when I got it, I became very curious on how they made those games, how that actually came about, and in terms of programming and things like that. So I think about a good 2 or 3 maybe months later, I ended up learning QBasic, getting really into programming, really into tech, and then my dad kind of introduced me to the internet. We actually had one of the old Prodigy installs back in the days when it was on DOS, connected through a 96 baud modem. So I hooked up some internet games, kind of played that, got really into that, and sort of just kind of took off from there, going from things like doing this thing called Future Cities, where it was sort of using SimCity to simulate towns and stuff like that. So I guess my interest in tech has just been at a young age, just being introduced to it and kind of wondering how everything worked together and how, you know, how they did what they did, and that sort of kind of spawned my interest.
QBasic and Prodigy.
Pretty much. I mean, what else am I supposed to say? That's. I mean, it's simple beginnings for me. It's not. There's nothing too. It's not like, oh, I wanted to get into a job or something. Like, no, I just happened to see what it was on the screen, wondering how the hell did they do that?
Yeah.
And just kind of gravitated towards that way.
I wrote an I Ching program in QBasic once.
That's just weird, you guys. Like, I mean, I got a Nintendo. I played with the little Rob that came with that little robot. I wanted it to do things, but I never thought about the software aspect of it. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. But I wanted to play with the hardware. So why would you go into the software side instead of the hardware side?
I think it's because I had a lot more control over the software side, and I didn't have to buy a whole lot of stuff. You know, when it came to QBasic, all you needed was DOS and a computer, and my parents had that, and that's sort of what was available to me. I wasn't that big into soldering until later, and even now, I'm not that big of a solderer. It just seemed like I had a lot more control on the software side versus the hardware side. I could do a lot more. I could have a variable here. I could display something on the screen. It was a lot more instant gratification, whereas hardware takes a little bit more time. You have to construct something. You have to program the hardware to do X, Y, or Z, and it takes a little bit longer, especially when we have something like the Rob. The Rob is sort of a at the time, a very complex robot that's doing these sort of movements and stuff like that. Whereas software, you just simply say, display X on the screen, and you see, an X. You see a character. You see something else. You do that. And I guess it was just the fact that it was just such an instant gratification for me that's sort of why I went that way.
Yeah, you don't have to be agile. You don't have to have good hand-eye coordination to do software.
You can't rage against your software, though. I mean, you can rage against your hardware if it doesn't work. You just smash it.
You are so wrong about that. You could rage against it.
You can't just smash it.
You can't smash the actual software, but you can smash the machine it's on.
I guess that's true. That's the hardware component right there.
I'm with you, Roberto. I'm more of a software guy myself, and it's an interesting, not a divide, but it's an interesting side of the aisle people tend to kind of fall on, software versus hardware.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends on what you're more used to. When it comes to hardware, some people are more used to, doing things with their hands. The kind of people that build, birdhouses or did things in shop class. Whereas I was the guy that just never really could get that right. I have terrible handwriting. I'm very, not the best coordination in terms of me. But software-wise, I just felt like I had a lot more control. I could tell it to do what I wanted to do without having to be limited by something like, am I good with a soldering iron? Can I physically construct this thing? I could say, no, put that line this way and put the line that way, so it makes kind of a faux 3D cube versus how do I make a physical cube in real space?
And you don't have to buy anything.
Well, and you don't make a mess either. I mean,
That's true too.
a lot of the hardware stuff, I used to always think this back in the day of the screensavers with Patrick Norton, who was just a hardware guy extraordinaire, still is. And I kind of equated it to people who like tinkering with cars. You get under the hood and you figure out how it all works. And it's like, to me, I'm like, it's dirty, it's messy. There are all these moving parts. I don't know. With software, it always seemed a little bit more math based. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's like you're either right or you're wrong. So if something doesn't work, you figure out what's going on. You write a little something, and it's in a nice little contained computer. Well, they're smaller than they used to be, but still contained.
Sort of theoretical versus practical.
Yeah.
I also like seeing the products you make instead of going, oh, it's in there. Trust me. Let me run this. Let me turn it on my computer. I'll show you my great system that I've built together. And then you don't see it every day unless you keep turning your system back on. That's why I like actually building things. But yeah, it seems to be two different sides.
Well, Roberto, any tips for us? Any thoughts? Things you'd like to see on Tech News today? Things you think you can tell us? Things you love about it too. We're not shy about accepting compliments, but it's always more helpful when we hear what people would like us to improve on.
I mean, there's not much I can think for you guys to improve. I mean, you cover the news of the day. You cover the news as it happens. There's really not much. It just depends on what happens in the news. I mean, I guess the only thing I can say is maybe dig a little bit deeper in terms of certain things. I know you have a limited amount of time to do that, but really there's not much I can tell you. You guys are the professionals in this whole matter.
Well, what do you like about it? What brings you to the show?
Honestly, my like of it spawned originally from the Buzz Out Loud days. I was a huge fan back when you were at CNET on Buzz Out Loud, you and Molly and everybody else in there. And the minute I heard you're moving to Twit, I just sort of kind of followed along and watched the content, knowing that I'd get sort of the same, at least feeling in terms of content-wise. And basically, I love the way it flows. I love the way you kind of have your guests around the horn, sort of topic-wise. I like the way you guys are doing the news. I guess the news views up front, and then moving in depth into certain articles. I think that's a very good format because it kind of gives you a sort of smattering of what the show is going to happen, and then sort of here's the more in-depth articles in each one of them. So I think that's a great format for you guys.
Seems to be a hit. Any questions for us before we let you go?
So here's my question.
All right.
With all the kind of weird hacker stories coming out, especially all the hacktivists and even state-run hacker things happening, do you think that next year is going to bring a big sort of chaos-inducing one? I'm not talking about just a simple DDoS or a password leak or a data leak. That can happen. That's common. I'm talking about something on the lines of like bringing down the Great Firewall of China or something very, very chaos-inducing that could propel Anonymous or someone in that kind of line into almost a not necessarily terrorist-like, but just in a very, very bigger light than it is now.
I don't know, guys. What do you think? I mean, we will have more on this in our predictions episode later this week.
Next Monday, actually.
But just specifically on the hacker side of things.
I mean, we're going to see it relatively soon. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, this is almost impossible to predict. You don't know what these guys are going to do. If there's enough of a cause behind something, things shift so fast. So I'm going to say if it hasn't happened yet, it won't happen soon. That's what I'll say.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it's a very tough thing to predict because again, it's not like there's some sort of running log of what hackers are up to.
Yeah, the way I look at it is we have always thought that that the next hack is always going to be the big hack. I've been hearing this for more than a decade. Next year, we're going to have the big vulnerability, or we're going to have the botnet that really gets out of control. Or, this is going to be the time. I'm not saying that it will never happen because that would be just as stupid as saying it's guaranteed to happen. But I do think that just because I think it's an arms race. That's what I think. There's always going to be someone threatening in a bigger and better way than we've ever seen a threat before, and there's always going to be a group of white hats and defense activists who are going to try to counter that. I think if anything, what we're seeing is the playing field's getting more complex. Back in the 80s, it was really all white hat hackers. People really didn't want to do anything malicious. It was all, your Kevin Mitnick type people who just wanted to see how stuff worked and didn't have a compunction to breaking other people's stuff. And that was the worst you could say about them. Now it's become state actors, as you mentioned. It's become hacktivists of all stripes. Hacktivists in service of good, hacktivists in service of avowedly wanting to cause trouble. And you've got a much more complex system on the other side. You have big companies, you have the so-called security experts, and then you have the anti-sec movement and all of that sort of thing. So I think it's even harder to predict. But I would guess that it's not any more likely than ever that we have a big, gargantuan security breach. That's not to say it won't happen. I'm just saying it's probably just as likely as it's ever been. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, because this whole year of just hacktivists, I was always kind of waiting for the chaos-inducing kind of hack, like bringing down something very important in terms of an infrastructure. Because I mean, every day, data leaks happen, password hacks happen. Those sort of things are common. DDoSes are pretty common in general. So I was waiting for something like Anonymous to pull off just a concentrated effort on doing something on a big global kind of large scale, kind of like I'm saying that they're going to pull down the firewall of China, but something along those lines where it just causes brings down some very, very critical system to some place that either A, impedes freedom, or B, does something they don't like, and then just causes just kind of mass hysteria and some type of concept. I was expecting that to happen this year just because of the way that they were kind of going towards what actions they were choosing in terms of how they were hacking and who they were hacking and what information they were kind of leaking out.
Sure. Yeah, well, it will be it will not be boring no matter what happens.
I would definitely say in the world of hacking, this year has been about as big as they've ever been as far as just kind of the efforts of hackers and hacktivism and all that kind of stuff. You've heard so much about it this last year versus, and maybe it's just that I'm more aware of it now than ever, but it really feels like there, like you said, Roberto, this kind of feels like there's a tide that's changed a little bit, and it's become a lot more important, in air quotes, than maybe it has been in years past.
All right, Roberto, thank you so much for joining us. Let folks know about where they can find all of your stuff, including My So-Called 8-Bit Life.
Well, if you want to check out my podcast, you go to mysocalled8bitlife.com. There you'll kind of see episodes right now. We're on episode 77. Just I had a friend of mine on there, Bill Meeks, who's fairly familiar.
Good old Meeks.
Yep, good old Meeks, good friend of mine. If you just want to follow me, however, I'm at Vincent404 there on Twitter. I pretty much post links to my podcast and anything else that kind of comes to mind, much like anyone else on Twitter.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Roberto, and thank you, Bodie Grimm. Thank you, Tom Gerke, and thank you, every single one of you out there, for watching and listening throughout the year. It's the only reason we do it, because if no one was watching or listening, well, I don't know. I might still just do it for myself.
Yeah.
Would you? Probably.
Of course we would.
It definitely
Love
helps
the
that
game.
people listen.
Yeah,
I
it makes it a lot more paying.
Well, and rewarding because you get the good feedback.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
No, we seriously.
Part of what this show's all about.
We have the smartest audience in the world, as far as I'm concerned, and that is not.
That one guy isn't very smart.
Well, I wasn't gonna mention.
On average, though, the
Just-
smartest audience.
Yeah,
on average.
99%
Yeah.
very smart.
Great folks out there with lots of expertise, and we love hearing from you, and that's why we do it. So please continue to watch, tell your friends. Continue to submit at our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com, or yes, technewstoday.reddit.com. See the work of Tom Gerke and the results of all the moderators there. And we will be back in 2 days. It's going to be Christmas tomorrow, so it's a holiday in the U.S. We will not have a show, but we will be back on Wednesday with our big stories, best stories of 2012. You can find us on the web, as always, twit.tv/TNT. Email us TNT@twit.tv, and we will see you in the new year with live shows again. Bye, everybody.